Welcome to the Lowdown on Ghana Web TV. This is your socio-political program that gives you all the information and updates you on the facts and figures. My name is Nii Akwei Ismail Akwei. In this edition, we are going to discuss the structural problems in our education system, and we would also discuss the way forward. Our guest is a key stakeholder in the industry, and he will be tackling these issues with us. We'll be right back after this break. Welcome back from the break. This is the Lowdown. My name is Nii Akwei Ismail Akwei. Our guest is the Executive Director of an education pressure group called Africa Education Watch. Welcome, Mr. Kofi Asare.
Thank you.
So, education issues have come up lately, and a lot of them have been around how the education system in the country is structured, from the basic education to the secondary and then the tertiary education level. Are we at standard when it comes to our education system in Ghana right now?
Well, I think our education system is not bad at all, considering the status we occupy in the sub-region. We have a 2-6-3 system where we do 2 years of pre-primary, 6 years of primary, and then 3 years of junior high school education at the basic level. Then you do 3 years of senior high school education and then 4 years of university education. That is the structure of our educational system. In the past 16 years, we declared free compulsory universal basic education. And in 2005, we replaced school fees with capitation grants. Government embarked on expansion drives by building schools in rural communities and ensuring that access to education was enhanced in respect of the free compulsory universal basic education policy, which was also the constitutional provision. Ever since, we've been making progress in our basic education system and also at the secondary level. The progress has mainly been on the line of access. We've been able to increase access from about 67% to 87%. As we speak, 87% of children aged 6 years are in class 1. So that is quite significant, an achievement, over the past 16 years since free compulsory universal basic education was introduced by the government of Ghana. At the secondary level, Ghana is one of about 5 or 6 countries in Africa with free secondary education. The policy was introduced about 3 or 4 years ago, and it's made instant impact in expanding access to secondary education. About 300,000 more children have enrolled in school as a result of the implementation of that policy, and we now have more than 1.2 million children in our secondary schools. So again, when it comes to access, we've done tremendously well, or we are doing tremendously well in expanding, the frontiers of access to basic and secondary education, and in pole position to achieving the target of Sustainable Development Goal 4. SDG Goal 4 simply says that all children who enroll must complete the full course of basic education, or if you like, all children should enroll and complete the full course of basic education, and also with relevant learning outcomes.
Okay, so since independence, I think it's been constitutionally mandated for children to be in school, and our constitutions have changed, but still education plays a key role in that. But is free education necessarily quality education?
Well, there are 3 elements at the basic level. There is free, there is a compulsory, there is a universal, there is a quality. So, to what extent is our education free? I will say, at the basic level, that education is largely free, in the sense that almost about half of our primary schools are covered by the Ghana School Feeding Program, where 1 hot meal is served in a day. About 3.3 million children are currently benefiting from free school feeding programs. In public schools, And that's, apart from enhancing the nutritional level of children, has also lessened the burden of providing food for kids, you know, in communities where a hot meal a day is a challenge and likely barrier to accessing basic education. In terms of free, again, the other cost of education that, you know, do not necessarily constitute food or fees. For instance, exercise books, crayons, and other items that the child should bring to school. Obviously, it remains a parental responsibility. 10 years ago, we had free exercise books and free uniforms in basic schools. Today, we don't have it anymore. So there is a significant cost borne by parents, and rightly so, because my understanding of how education works in the third world is that there is a direct correlation between one's investment and their attention or their approach to education. If you are not contributing anything at all, your approach to education of your child is negative. But if you are investing significantly, it is difficult for you to shirk your responsibility in supervising your child, for instance, after school, ensuring that the child gets to school at the right time, etc., etc. And so it serves a useful purpose for parents to have some contribution to make. But largely, education is free. There are no fees. We've migrated from the era of fees or hidden fees in our basic education system. Even PTA fees is not allowed. And so, on the free aspects, we are doing the maximum. Bearing in mind that, as I mentioned, parents will still have responsibilities even though education is free. The issues remain within access on the frontiers of equitable access. I don't want to talk about quality now, just access. Even within access, the issues within access has to do with equitable access. Why? Because 87% of children are in school, age 6. So 13% of children who are age 6 years are not in kindergarten 1. But they are supposed to be in school. It means that in many communities, children are not going to school. We did a research which found out, among others, that every day, 30 children drop out of school in Ghana. Every day. Out of about 720,000 students who enrolled in kindergarten 1 in 2009 September, only 586,000 or so wrote the BEC in 2000. It means that about 136,000 did not write the BEC. If you do a cohort transition analysis of our educational system, the access and then the trends in transition, you realize that the cohort dropout rate is about 20%, which means that if 100 people enrolled in kindergarten 1 today, by the time they got to junior high school 3, you won't find 20. So these are the issues within access. Okay.
So with the 20% that you mentioned, what if they've been enrolled in maybe carpentry apprenticeship or any other trade?
Okay.
Is that also, or could they be classified as dropouts?
Within our educational system, you're either in basic school or you've dropped out. Because basic education is fundamental and is compulsory, as the Constitution stipulates. It is compulsory and fundamental because it is the critical foundation you require to go and learn carpentry. So you can't be out of the classroom with the excuse of learning carpentry. So we categorize you as one of the about 400,000 children who are out of school. Yeah, one of the challenges for me, the most severe of the challenges is the issue of quality. You know, everyone enrolls their child in school in anticipation of a certain quality of learning outcomes. You take your child to school, the expectation that after 11 years of schooling, they should be able to be numerate and literate. They should acquire problem-solving skills. They should acquire arithmetic skills and reading skills, writing skills, critical thinking, and all that. But over time, we have realized that while focusing on enhancing access to free education at the basic level, the quality of our graduates does not meet the level required. Only about 25% of primary school graduates are reaching minimum proficiency in English and mathematics. Means that about 75% of our primary school graduates are not able to speak and write good English, and also they are also not good in arithmetic. As we speak, in primary 3, only 7% are reading and writing like primary 3 students, according to UNESCO. So according to UNICEF. So you find that we have quality issues, and the quality has become much more challenging because it has become a culture. So much so that even the low-income earners in our society would borrow money and enroll their children in private schools in the midst of public schools. And I'm not saying that public schools are everywhere, because there are so many communities in Ghana without public schools. And in communities like Medina, Bawiweja, South, most of Greater Accra, only 30% of schools are public, 70% are private. Most of the districts in Greater Accra. Why? Because of the poor quality of learning outcomes that product of public basic schools exhibits, or they are able to attain when they complete. So it doesn't make that business attractive.
But there was a change in learning and even teaching for the basic level, because for some years, from I think nursery to about class 3, there's a mixture of both languages, that's English and then local language. Is that something that's effective?
In response to the quality debacle, there have been various interventions by governments in time past and at present to improve quality, and lots of them. It ranges from continuous capacity building training of teachers, enhancing teacher capacity in applying the right pedagogy, strengthening management and supervision at the school level, providing textbooks, adapting flexible instructional policies where teachers can teach in the language that the child understands. So many interventions have been deployed. But underlying all these interventions is the lack of, I call it, political will to engineer the change we really want to do, and we really want to see. I'm saying so because if you look at the last 10 years, the amount of money available to basic education has reduced by about 20 percentage points. In 2008, basic education received 55% of the total education envelope. In that year, secondary received 9.8%. 10 years after, in 2018, basic education receives 37%, and secondary 25%. We have reduced the percentage allocation of expenditure within the education envelope due basic education by about 20 percentage points in the past 10 years. And we have increased that of secondary education, for instance, from 9.8 to 25. That's more than 15%.
So are you saying basic education needs more funding than secondary education?
Of course. Because you have more than 8 million children in basic education. And you have only 1.2 million in secondary education. Not just that. It is not just a numerical game. The foundation of education is at the basic level. The quality of the raw materials you produce, churn out for the factory at the senior high school level to process into usable commodities, is at the basic level. If the raw material is bad, the finished product cannot be better. So I have always believed that at least 50% of the education sector's budget must go to basic education. But in this case, we have about 35% going to basic education. So the decline in the share of basic education of the education sector expenditure tells you that the political will to really resource basic education and strengthen its quality is not necessarily being manifested in the wallets of Ghana. And education is input-output. If your input by way of resource, textbooks, infrastructure, quality teacher is available, teacher is well paid. If you are able to resource by providing these inputs, you will get quality output. In term, I mean, I forgot to add quality supervision monitoring. You will get, good outcomes. But if the resources are not there, you won't get any different outcome from the status quo.
But the complaints that have been coming up in terms of even funding and the level of education where or that needs most funding or most attention, in the past when basic education level had a lot of funding, didn't reflect in the end at the end of the chain, like the university level where most of the students dropped out. So a lot of money was being put in basic education. University level, just a few people. It's recently that we have a lot of people getting to the university level. And if you want to compare, there's a kind of an inverted pyramid or a pyramid style there when it comes to the growth from one level to the other.
Pyramid, yeah. Every education structure in the world is structured as a pyramid. So that's not too much of a problem. If 700,000 children enroll in kindergarten today, the fact that 170,000, maximum 150,000 will get to university is not necessarily an issue, because it will definitely be a pyramid. Because as you progress, people will have to fall at the post-secondary level and acquire skills, enter into the world of work much earlier than others. Not everyone should go to middle level or high level Mampoa Street. So you develop skills at all levels, you understand. But I agree with you that the pyramid, the apex should not be that narrow, where only about 100,000 children are able to go to university out of 700,000 who enroll in school. I agree to that extent. And that is why I am happy that government has a target to increase the number of tertiary enrollments by 100%. Within the education strategy plan, tertiary admission rates currently at 19%. Tertiary enrollment rate is supposed to increase to 40% by 2030. And that will mean government doubling the number of tertiary institutions. So if the universities are admitting about 115,000 a year, we are looking at doing 130,000 a year. Sorry, 230,000 a year. And I think that is one of the dimensions which will help us to open the apex of that pyramid, so that it doesn't become too narrow. So that if 700,000 are enrolling kindergarten 1, and you have 300K into completing at the university, at least just about 40% of those who complete started. It makes quite a deal of sense. I know there are countries that are doing 60% and all that, for example, in Japan and Korea. Yeah. But it's a good start to ensure that we don't lose too many people as we progress to tertiary. I think that, having said that, there is no reason why basic education should not receive the lion's share of the education cake. There is absolutely no reason, because its delivery is very, very expensive, and it's very, very important, and it's very, very challenging. There are communities you find basic schools there, you can't find a secondary school there. Secondary schools are normally located in the big towns, but you will not be crossing rivers to attend school if you are in a secondary school, for instance. But basic schools are found in every corner, and it's important that we approach basic education finance with tact and utmost priority. Not to say that is the foundation of secondary and tertiary education.
Okay, so we'll be going on a break, but we'll come back and talk about the teaching side of the education sector. The ratio between teachers and students is quite huge. I mean, the gap is huge. We have less teachers, and a lot of those who are qualified to go into the teaching field are all going to study either psychology or other humanities courses. They're not going to a teaching education. But is it that there's a problem with our teaching schools or teaching or education institutions that we have in the country? We'll be right back after this break. Welcome back to the Lowdown. My name is Nii Akwei Ismail Akwei. We are talking about the educational problems in Ghana and then the way forward. Our guest is Executive Director of Africa Education Watch, Mr. Kofi Asare. So we're talking about how basic education needs more funding, as you're saying, and that it helps to meet the SDGs, and also quality needs to be put there. Now I'm looking at the teacher-student ratio, where we have, I can't tell exactly the ratio, but I know we have less teachers for some programs. Recently, the Ghana Traditional Council was complaining about having less Ghana teachers in Accra, and then some schools are not even teaching Ghana at all. And this problem is not for only Ghana, but some other subjects as well across the country. What is the problem with our education institutions? Is it that they are not attractive enough for people who want to be teachers in the future?
We have a teaching problem, and it's multidimensional. The challenge is this: the system produces teachers and deploys them, but the system for deploying them is not rationalized with the needs of some schools. So the system supports urbanization of teachers, and it doesn't help the ruralization of teachers. That's the challenge we have. So every year we are deploying, in the past 5 years, we've been deploying about 20,000 teachers a year to basic schools. And I mean kindergarten, primary, and junior high schools. Out of this number, you find that we still have close to 300,000 teachers in the basic sector. But there are still empty classrooms in the rural areas. Meanwhile, if you look at the national teacher norms and then our attainment of those norms, we are well within the pupil-teacher ratio of 1:35 and 1:25. We are well within. Why is it that we are well within, but when you go to classes or most classrooms in rural areas, they are empty classrooms? Two reasons account for this. One is that we are not using the class pupil-teacher ratio to do deployment. And so if you are not using the class pupil-teacher ratio to do deployment, on paper, it will appear as if District A or School A, because you have 10 teachers and you have 200 students, the pupil-teacher ratio is 20, and you are fine. Meanwhile, it may happen that it may not be 20 per class. It may happen that in class 1, you may have smaller numbers in class 1, and then it may happen that in class 2 you may have very large numbers. Okay, but if you do the average, it will appear as if, okay, dividing 200 by 10 is 20. But if you go into the school, you realize that no, some classes are very, very big and some are very, very small. So the PTR issue at the national level looks good, but when you go to most of the schools, they are very high PTR. In Greater Accra region, all the schools that we have researched since school COVID reopening, the average pupil-teacher ratio was about 60, and with many schools operating between 60 and 80 per class, but on average. If you go to Kaswa area, go to Senya area, you know, Lucy area, you go to Medina area, or go to Oyibi, Ayimensa area, schools are running 80 per class. About the Malam area.
Is it acceptable?
The norm is not 135. People are running twice the number of people they have to manage within COVID. Okay, so yes, we need more teachers, but we can't be deploying more teachers when the system for deploying them favors urban students. Teachers will refuse postings into rural communities. Why? Because they are being paid the same salary that their colleagues in Accra are taking. We've been discussing 10% rural allowance for teachers since 2006. It has never happened. So there is no incentive for teachers to accept postings into rural areas. They are posted and then they leave. 7,000 teachers are leaving the profession every year. Attrition is an issue. So we are deploying teachers by the numbers. Average, as I said, about 20,000 to 22,000 a year, average in the past 4 years. Making out about 90,000. But we are still having empty classrooms because the system partly leaks. As there is a significant level of attrition. And in addition to the attrition, there is a rejection rate. Teachers are posted to communities and then they refuse to go. And then they find their way into urban communities through other means. The system hasn't got adequate measures to ensure that strictly Kofi Asare is posted to Mekukrum Primary 3. So go there. The system, people are able to manipulate the system and they refuse postings and still get placement or posting in other communities.
The fact that they get placement also means there's a need for more teachers, because if everywhere was...
They get placement in schools that are choked. There are schools that have more than one teacher per class. There are schools you go to the library, you see 2, 3 teachers sitting there. They are just climbing on straws just to remain in urban areas. They don't want to go to rural areas. We want teachers deployed to where they are in need. We want teachers to be deployed on the basis that every child must have a teacher, and not teachers deployed because teachers want to get an employment. We need to depart from that system. We have always advocated that we need to decouple the teaching, the posting of teachers when they complete college of education from their employment. When you complete college, you have it doesn't mean you should be complete. You should be transferred. Deployed immediately. No. You apply for a job. We have advocated for a system where in Nalerugu, when there's a space in a school, there will be an advert in the dailies. Now we need 4 teachers in Nalerugu. So when you are attending for the interview, after you have been licensed, you go for an interview for that particular post. That is what is done in other countries, advanced economies. So when there's a vacancy in Mekukrum Primary, it is advertised. And if you are interested, you apply, not to be a student in a college of education who has graduated, enjoyed Alawa, and then passed license, and you are putting pressure on government to employ you. Employ you where? No. You don't do that in advanced countries. In advanced countries, there is a vacancy announced, published in the dailies. Then you will apply to that particular school for the job. So that you won't come and sit in Accra and complain that you were posted to Tribenho and that place is too far, it's too dusty, so you won't go. No. You applied Tribenho. You saw the advert, you applied, and you went for the interview in respect of Tribenho. That is where we should get to by now, so that we will be reducing, the rejection rate for teachers, especially in rural areas. Apart from that, we need to incentivize teaching. If I accept to go and teach in a rural area without internet, automatically opportunities for me to do extra career enhancement and extra income, the fact that I'm in a rural area without environment economy means that I am disadvantaged. So how do you motivate me or compensate me for accepting to go and live in that environment for at least 3 years and teach? When my colleagues are in Accra, they are having access to internet. They are able to do extra classes because Accra is a high or middle income cosmopolitan economy, and they are making extra money. So if we continue to earn the same salary, then someone will not go to the rural area.
But most of the teacher trainees who go to school, they know they would be deployed out to either a rural community or in the urban area. But they sign up to it, and when it gets there to a time of deployment, and they say they don't want to go anymore. Could it be that they've not been motivated enough while in school?
No. It is simply the fact that they went to school because they knew they would get a job. There are 2 things here. Aspiring to be a teacher because you want to impact lives and build a profession out of it. And applying to be a teacher because you are going employed. You don't see any prospect of getting jobs, and so you want to go and do your degree so that you can be employed. The motive for you enrolling is the decider. 30, 40 years ago, the motive was for people to become teachers and impact lives and also make a living. Today, the motive is that once I enter college education, I'll get free hour. By the time I finish, I'll get free posting. So I'll go and teach. It is not because they want to teach. That's the difference.
That's quite interesting, because a lot of people are looking for jobs and they enter into fields just because they need a job and they don't need really to impact on anybody's life. So what's the way forward on this teacher problem, the people-teacher ratio issue that we have? Is it that we need more teachers, motivate the teachers? Because you've mentioned motivation, giving some 10% to those who go to rural areas, but it's not working right now because everything that has been done and all the education isn't going through.
Yeah, as I indicated earlier, at the end of the academic year, vacancies are declared by schools, submitted to the district education directorate. All I'm saying is that these vacancies shouldn't be filled through wholesale deployments. These vacancies must be advertised on a particular portal, let's say on the Genius website. That we have 20,000 vacancies for primary school teachers in these locations. In all of them are there. So you teacher graduates who have been licensed by National Teaching Council, go and apply to the school that you want. If you get the job, then you go and do it. No one posted you for you to be thinking about changing it. You apply for the job. That is the ideal situation. Until we get there, we are going to have people trying to influence the system to be in areas where they are not needed. When children are suffering to get teachers in areas that teachers are needed, but they are not there.
Recently, you had an issue with WAEC concerning the WASI that was written, and I think you came up with some proof to show that there was a leakage and there was back and forth. Do you have a problem with the WASI exams itself in totality? Do you think it is the right step to test or examine the level of knowledge or the learning skill of the students in the secondary level?
I think that we don't have an issue with WAEC. We have an issue with the quality of examinations WAEC conducts. I think WAEC is a credible institution, but they have been overtaken by technology. And so what was leaking 20 years ago when I was in Benkum Secondary School is maybe the same as what is leaking today. But 20 years ago, there was no WhatsApp. So a leakage that would have lingered around Accra now gets universal, the whole country, within seconds because of a facilitating technology. And the leakage that couldn't have been commercialized and only shared in person is now being leaked onto social media handles like on Telegram, where they have 100,000 subscribers, and then being marketed and reaching all students who want to buy. That is the challenge, a summary of the WAEC challenge. So it's not a problem with WAEC, but it's a problem with the examination we conduct. And what is happening is actually a function of the society we live in, a function of also of WAEC in respect of they being overtaken by technology. And everybody has a responsibility. It didn't appear as if questions were leaking. That's not the issue. To be honest with you, the only paper we monitored which did not leak was, I think, geography and biology. Apart from these two, I don't remember any paper we monitored which did not leak this year. By 10 p.m., questions are available on the Telegram platforms. And so we were buying the questions. We bought all the questions. And with the exception of biology and geography, all the questions came.
The WAEC was emphatic that it was falsehood for some of the research that you made, and you found out that some papers leaked. They're saying somewhere where it didn't leak at all.
And they said they will sue us. Right? And they said they will sue us. So why haven't they sued us?
It's not possible. Because we have provided our evidence of the leakage, including where we buy our questions, how much we buy them, from whom we buy them, the time we receive them. We have sent all to the CID to investigate a month ago. So what is the falsehood? We've gone past that. Anyone who has a discussion about whether there was leakage or not is not prepared to face the issue and resolve it. Anyone you see having a discussion about, do questions leak, the magnitude of education what is talking about, then the person is not ready to resolve this. Everybody is aware that it is not an exception for students to get questions on WASI. It is actually a norm. It has become a norm so much so that students of Nii Akwei Senior High School bent down their own dormitory 2 days or 3 days ago because teachers did not allow them to copy during some of the papers during WASI. What does it tell you? It tells you that the norm did not happen in that school. So what I tell you is the norm. The norm is that students are allowed to copy. And we monitored this year's WASI from over 100 schools. But before our report is launched, later in October, WAEC themselves issued a presser and indicated that they found some schools. They listed about 10 of them in their release. That in these schools, students were colluding with validators to copy. But that's the practice. Now let me explain what happens at WASI. Before WASI, most of the schools collect money from the students. Now this is done with the knowledge of the school heads and assistant masters. They mobilize the students. These schools, not all of the schools, mobilize the students, collect money from them. Between 200 and 300 seats.
It's a huge allegation.
We've gone beyond allegation.
So you have all the details in the report that's coming up.
That we have provided evidence to the CID to investigate. So it's not an allegation. You understand? Okay. Go and read WAEC's own press statement they released about 5 weeks ago. When we made the allegation that there were leakages. They issued a 5-page press release. And WAEC is saying that they have listed some schools. That in these schools, the students, teachers, invigilators, both internal and WAEC's own external people, have been compromised. They are collaborating to cheat. What does it mean? So I'm only telling you what we knew before WAEC issued that pressure. We have been monitoring WASI 1 month before the first paper.
So 100 cities. They charge 100 cities, the headmasters.
No. These schools, some of the schools,
yes,
they charge between 200 and 300 from the students. That's what they used to go and buy the questions and then bribe invigilators and then pay the master or the teacher whose subject is being written. In these schools, they set up what they call invigilators WhatsApp groups where the invigilators who are supposed to go and ensure that the students don't cheat busily solve questions, put them on the WhatsApp groups, and the students are also on these groups. So at dawn, by 4 a.m., questions have been solved. We were on these WhatsApp groups. You understand? We were participants in some of these WhatsApp groups. And we have sent the information to the Ghana Police Service. Very soon, you will hear. The point I want to make is that it is not that one student decided, I'm going to cheat. No. In many schools, it is very, very well organized. So when WAEC admitted that they have seen it in 10 schools, I said, okay, we are getting there. Very soon, we'll get to the parity. We'll get to parity where our understanding of the issue will be the same as WAEC's. Because what they see happening in 10 schools, we saw happening in more than 50 schools. Because we started monitoring WASI 1 month before the first paper. And online, we're buying questions between 30 Ghana cedis and 100 cedis. 30 Ghana cedis and 100 cedis. And I am happy that most of the platforms that we buy questions on, WAEC is also on the platforms. Because in their presser, they listed 10 Telegram platforms. Some of them, we are also on them. We are buying questions from there. So it means we all agree that the marketplace for the questions are about 18 different Telegram platforms. And as I speak to you, yesterday, they are doing adverts for BEC.
This is quite interesting, and we'll come back to more of that, and then we'll also look at some solutions for WAEC and how they could they could deal with this exam leakage issue. This is a Lowdown. My name is Nii Akwei Ismail Akwei. We'll be right back after this break. Welcome back to the Lowdown. My name is Nii Akwei Ismail Akwei. We are discussing the educational reforms, educational problems in Ghana, and our guest is Executive Director of Africa Education Watch, Mr. Kofi Asare. We are talking about the leakages in WAEC, and you are telling us that DEC, we are facing a similar situation. What have you found out so far?
It is difficult to do the same thing over and over again and expect different results. You know, as we speak, this platform that sold the WAEC questions have started advertising BEC. They have started advertising that they will be selling BEC. You understand? But I'm not surprised because it's the same car. It's the same car, different driver, but the same car. You are fueling it with the same fuel. The infrastructure, the processes for certain questions, printing questions, putting them in depots, writing them, it's the same. The superstructure is the same. So I won't be surprised if the same thing happens at BEC level. But again, what I'm saying, I'm not talking about the institution called WAEC. I'm talking about their output. Technology has overtaken them, and it has commercialized what ordinarily was one-on-one to, a small level business. Now it's now a big business. Very, very big business. You remember, we were told that by WAEC that security agencies arrested one guy in Kaswa who was the kingpin behind one of the platforms called Jerusalem. They arrested the guy on Saturday and we were all happy. Monday dawn, before I think there was a call mass paper or something, the guy saw the questions. So I asked about the guy there. You know, it's an organized group.
Yeah.
Now, what are we not doing right? We are not admitting that there's a problem because it looks as if some people are not worried that there's a problem. It looks as if some people are not worried that what we see as a problem is a problem. That's why it's been there as well. Since 2013, that's when our discussions with some of these question marketers reveal that the issue, this business became business from 2013. Every government comes and they don't want to talk about it for reasons only known to them. So we are happy that this government has made some pronouncements, yet to be actualized though, but some pronouncements that suggest that they are interested in addressing the issue. But let me indicate that I am cautiously optimistic. I think there's a long way to go in respect of trying to, extract the political will to initiate the kind of reforms we need. Not only in Ghana. What we are discussing is taking place in Liberia. It's taking place in Nigeria. In fact, on this platform, they are selling questions not only for Ghana, Nigeria, and sometimes in Liberia. So I appreciate the enormity of the task. But it takes one who is of high integrity to admit that yes, this problem exists before we can solve it. Our tertiary institutions are one of the consumers of the product of senior high school education. I expect the universities to be interested in all these discussions. I'm not seeing that level of interest. There was a time students were writing entrance exams to enter universities. When I was leaving university in 2001, students were writing exam to enter. And today, there are many programs in the universities that students have to write entrance exams to enter, to even though you pass. All these are due to the lack of due recognition for WAEC certification processes. I think we are not too far from that era. Because what I saw last year and this year, and I'm saying last year and this year because EDUWATCH is only 2 years old. So I couldn't have seen similar ones as EDUWATCH in 2008 or 7. Sorry, 2017 or 16. Okay. But since we started engaging the accountability issues in the assessment sector of Ghana's education system. What I've seen in the past 2 years suggests that the norm is that every student, the norm is that students should have access to questions before the paper. And the exception is that there are some schools where they are very strict, like Wesley Girls, like St. Louis. There are some schools that it is impossible for a student to have a mobile phone. Don't forget that this business takes place on mobile phone. So you realize that when students get to Form 3, they make sure everybody has a phone. They keep demanding phones, and they have the phones, so that they can plug in onto these channels and then get the question. So it will take a collective effort from government, from WAEC itself, and then from parents. If parents are ready to pay for their awards to go and buy questions, then it means that we have a problem. But for me, the people in the middle of this business who have a key to ending it or continuing it are some teachers. Some teachers. Because they are on the ground. They are the regulators. The regulators are not policemen per se, they are teachers. If a teacher is ready to teach someone for 3 years, and when it's time to assess the person, more or less a test of the teacher's work, that teacher is ready to help the person to cheat, then it means that the teacher himself admits that he did a bad job. If all teachers resolve that we are going to smoke our colleagues who have been doing conniving with students to cheat in examination, and those teachers who are involved in these collusions resolve that they will no more take money from students and go and buy questions for them, answer it for them, and then shepherd them into examination halls and supervise their cheating, it cannot take place.
I think for some people, they want to know who is selling the questions, because definitely it's coming from the printers of the question.
No. Again, we haven't had a national conversation because we are shy. And people seem to be happy about the situation. So we don't even know whether it's a problem or not a problem. That's why we haven't had a national conversation. We have called for a national inquiry, a national level inquiry into the issue of examination fraud, at least in the past 10 years. You will appreciate the processes and get to understand that it's not a simple matter of being leaked from printing houses. Questions are set by teachers in Ghana. Printing houses, commercial printing houses do the printing. And then the printing is done about maybe a month before the paper. But questions are leaked 12 hours to the paper. So, and by the time they are leaked, questions are supposed to be sleeping in the depots, guarded by state security. The keys held by WAEC and GES. It is difficult for you to say that because it leaked in the night before the paper, those two people who have the keys to the questions, the GES staff and the WAEC staff, and then perhaps the policeman guarding the depot, are responsible. No, it could happen that the printers took the questions, but then they withheld it because if you release the questions much earlier, WAEC will cancel the papers. It could also be that the people who set the questions 2 months ago or 3 months ago also had an idea about which possible questions will come. So it's difficult for you to do an armchair speculation of where the leakage is coming from. But what we are certain about is that there are leakages. So I believe that in economics, there's something we call in sales law. Sales law simply says that supply will create its own demand. There are the Keynesian law. Demand creates its own supply. Okay. Let me use the Keynesian law, Keynesian model. There is a demand for apple. Right? If there is no demand, apple will be useless. Okay. So how do we deflate that demand? We can deflate that demand by beginning to think about adapting ways of assessing our students in a manner that even if they are given the questions a day before, it will only help them to prepare for the exam because the exam will be applied. It won't be recall. Name this, explain this, describe, name, list. No. Recall. No. It will be analytical. So even if you have the questions ahead, it will only help you to prepare. The examination methods where you are giving the question ahead of the paper a day before
right? Because what you are giving as a question is actually meant for you to apply in answering. Can we get to that point where we are examining students on applied learning instead of recall? If we get there, then it means that before every paper, students are going to be given the questions 24 hours prior. So, would there be any demand for Akwei again? No. So even if there's a leakage, the leakage is useless because students are going to get it 24 hours anyway. Yeah. That is one. By using the Keynesian law to deflate the demand. Another way to solve it is also to try and then curtail the supply. Sales law. Supply creates its own demand. If there's no supply, there won't be demand. If you want to buy cocaine and there's no cocaine, can you buy cocaine? No. Okay. So how do you do it? You build a technology that ensures that questions are transmitted without leaking. You can have a system where questions are sent to examination centers 30 minutes to the examination through end-to-end encrypted email systems. You build security printers in every center. How many schools? About 900 schools. So you just click a button and 30 minutes before the paper, you send this email to all schools. There's Wi-Fi in almost every secondary school in Ghana now. Courtesy government's free Wi-Fi program, which is great. So all you need is reliable electricity, and then you just send it there. If questions leak 30 minutes to the examination, I don't think it is a leak enough to influence. Because by that time, every student is already seated on their seat. We have made recommendations on what I'm discussing, and we have sent it to the ministry and WAEC, but we haven't heard anything from them in respect of clear benchmarks being set, timelines, and then actions being taken. But we've heard, pronouncement that we will bring technology into the picture, but we are not too sure about. To be honest with you, I am cautiously optimistic about something happening. But we are hoping that as we keep pushing and keep providing the evidence that we are pouring water in a basket when it comes to the way we assess our students and the quality and the credibility of WAEC's assessment system for many of the schools or many of the candidates. Until we get to that point, it will be very, very difficult for us, for decision makers to agree that something must be done. But I think that we will get there very soon.
Your recommendation is really technological, and they say we are in a technological age, and it's a fact because there's technology everywhere. And lately we see students also agitating. Some of them want to use phones, and lots of the schools are against it. And also we have issues of rights of students, and most of it comes up from issues of being able to use certain things or do certain things in school that in the past is forbidden. Presently, it's forbidden, and they keep fighting for that. Do you think we can marry technology with our education institution, especially secondary education? Right now, we are not there yet.
Government is doing very well in deploying EdTech to solve problems in our educational sector, especially post-COVID or within COVID. We have the Edmodo platform, which is a virtual learning platform for basic school students. We have the iCampus and other, virtual platforms. So virtual schooling is one area that government has invested so much in. Under the government-owned education COVID response program, about $15 million has been deployed into building virtual learning systems and technologies, and training teachers to have the capacity to teach using virtual learning technologies and all that. And digitizing curriculum, etc. So it is a possibility, and we are already exploring it. The challenge is that when it comes to mobile phone is a tool, and at the same time, child online safety issues makes it dangerous for children to access mobile phones without parental guidance. And in secondary schools, in your dormitory, you don't have that guidance. That is why there's a policy banning use of mobile phones. But I dare say that if you went with a microscope to most of our senior high schools, you won't find any students in some of the schools without a phone. It's a no.
Yeah.
It's a no. So I think that blanket ban is not helping in the sense that it's blanket. But we should have rather an alternative system where we are going to have a tablet for all students. I don't know who's going to buy it. The state is going to buy it, or parents, or both. But there must be a tablet for use e-learning, hooked up to the internet of the school. This tablet will be configured such that it will only connect to the school's Wi-Fi. And when it connects to the school's Wi-Fi, because there's an administrator for the school Wi-Fi, only permitted websites can be visited. That provides the platform for students to learn from sanctioned or approved websites and portals. Then we will be enjoying the digital literacy and the benefits of innovation.
I'm sure a lot of students will be happy with this because they are using phones at home anyway. Yes. And there's less supervision.
Yeah, so we will be happy too because when students have that, they cannot go and buy questions from Telegram, because you can't access Telegram. You can't access it to WhatsApp, for instance, on this phone. You can't go to Facebook on this phone. And so they cannot have any interface with these questions. And it will save them because of all forms of child abuse. Child online protection issues are huge. And so I think that would be a way to ban the use of mobile phones.
Yeah.
Okay. But I dare say that the ban of mobile phones is one of the most ineffective bans that we've seen in this country. It's next to the ban on the possession of marijuana. I was telling someone the last time that marijuana has been banned, but it is even though we are about 50 years into the ban. But it looks as if it's a covered production in Ghana. So what did the ban do? So I think that the ban is not effective. We need to deploy measures to ensure that the ban becomes effective. And if you provide alternative guidance for students that is restrictive, that will give them much more security, and confines them to learning portals alone. It will make good use of school Wi-Fi, and the students will not have to smuggle phones to school under the pretext of trying to use it to learn.
Okay, so final question. To what extent is or are students entitled to rights? So let's keep it to basic or even secondary education level. Do students have rights in those levels of education?
Ghana is a signatory to the Universal Convention of the Rights of the Child. And so, yes, our children have rights. They have the right to dignity, they have the right to life, they have the right to education, they have the right to decision, they have the right to participation. They have all the rights that children should have, both according to local international convention, also local statute. So, basic school, secondary school, yes, our children have the entitlement of rights. Because
I'm asking this because looking at issues that have been coming up, currently we are talking about, I think, capital punishment. We are talking about hair. We're talking about access to even technology and other things like this. And some students are even demonstrating because of food, the quality of food that they are given. And a lot of the authorities or people in authority think they are not, or it's not in their place to come up and demand for certain things, and that they are supposed to be governed by the rules of the school and keep to it. Is it something that we should hold on to currently?
I think that, let me kill the right angle. I think that we should distinguish between rights that facilitates the education of children while they are in school and their educational process, and rights that may be inimical to their education. So we have access to all things, but not all things favor us. So the enjoyance of certain rights would negate the right to education. And that is why it's important that institutions, and indeed institutions, do restrict the enjoyance of certain rights. So the reason why children don't have the right to wear the kind of dresses they want to wear in school, even though they have the rights, is that if they are not restricted in enjoying those rights, it will affect their rights to education. Within the context of rights, always look at education and say, that the most sacrosanct right in school is the right to education. Every other right that has a tendency of undermining that right is a secondary right, so far as your education is concerned. That is why we were in support of someone who was wearing dreadlocks, and the person was not. The person wanted to go to school, and we were supporting the person. Why? Because the right to education is supreme. Okay, the school has a right to determine how you appear, yes, but the right that that person brings about is the right to religion, to manifest their religion. We thought that the right to education was supreme and it should be considered utmost in taking such a decision. Insofar as enjoying their religion, the right to manifest their religion, which is the dreadlocks, did not necessarily inconvenience others and did not negatively influence them. Okay, so, but if you are going to wear a uniform which is not decent, okay, which is sexually seductive, or which is not decent, the teachers have the right to restrict your enjoyance of that right, because it will not only affect your decency, but it also affect other students. So yes, rights are important, but some rights always have to be curtailed or managed in a manner that does not conflict with the enjoyance of your right to education, because you are in school to enjoy just that right. But the second issue you raise has to do more with assertiveness. There's a culture in our schools where students are not allowed to be assertive. If students are served with bad food, they are not allowed to complain. If students are being handled by teachers, they are not allowed to complain. Some students are sexually molested by teachers, they are not allowed to complain. Kaneshi Secondary Technical, in the past 2 months, about 6 or 7 teachers have been found guilty of several cases of sexual misconduct with students. You understand? And reading the disciplinary committee report, you see one teacher has a history. Okay, so why are we now having a discussion? Because our systems in most of these schools do not make the girls assertive to be able to speak out against negatives. So if you don't groom the child as a democratic citizen who must appreciate that, yes, I must pay taxes, but at the same time I must demand accountability from the system, then the child will complete school, they will be literate and literate, but then they will be timid and they will not be active citizens. So in as much as it is important for children to be respectful when they are in school, they have to be assertive of their rights. So when food is bad, they must complain using the appropriate mechanisms. When some teachers are taking undue advantage of them or abusing them, they have to complain. They don't have to be timid. If you go through our education system and you complete and you are timid and you are unaware of your right to demand accountability from the public system, then you are a half-baked secondary school or tertiary graduate. That is why it's important for us to appreciate that. We are growing up in a democracy. We are being schooled and trained to get the skills to be able to become useful citizens in society, earn a living, impact society, but also play our key role as democratic citizens. And for you to be a democratic citizen, apart from voting, apart from paying your taxes, apart from protecting the environment, you should know that you must demand accountability from the system. Because without accountability, there cannot be any democracy.
So basically, children have the right to demand accountability from the system. Thank you very much, Mr. Kofi Asare. And when exactly are we getting the report on the exam leakage?
Well, we are planning to launch the report in the last week of October.
Okay. In
the last week of this month. So, we will not just be launching a report, but we'll also be showing a lot of videos. We will be showing the whole world what takes place in some of our schools before and during examination, so that those who will come and always dispute everything, they will now be watching videos, okay, to appreciate the pictures, the videos behind the scripts. And I think that it will help us to all collectively take a decision that we can't continue going this way. We need to reform the system and restore the credibility of our assessment system. And at the end of the day, Ghana will be the beneficiary.
Ghana will be the beneficiary. Ghana will be there for the launch. Thank you very much, Mr. Kofi Asare. We're talking about our education system and all the problems in there and some solutions as well. This is the Lowdown. My name is Nii Akwei Ismail Akwei. We'll be back another week. Be safe.